There's a question that can change everything, but most people are too afraid to ask it. It's not, what do I want to do with my life, or, how can I be successful? It's much simpler, and much more unsettling. Am I living someone else's life? Maybe you've never said it out loud, but you felt it, a quiet sense of disconnection, a nagging suspicion that the choices you're making aren't really yours. You wake up, go through your routine, check off the boxes, and yet, somewhere deep inside, you wonder, whose dream am I chasing? Whose expectations am I trying to meet? Whose approval am I working so hard to earn? It starts early. From the moment we're born, we're surrounded by voices telling us who to be. Parents, teachers, friends, even strangers, all with their own ideas about what a good life looks like. Some of these messages are loving, meant to protect us or help us succeed. Others are rooted in fear, in tradition, in the desire to fit in. We absorb them without even realizing it. We learn what's acceptable, what's desirable, what's possible. We learn to play roles, the dutiful child, the high achiever, the reliable friend, the responsible adult. And somewhere along the way, we start to lose track of where those roles end and we begin. Take the story of Ria. She was always the good daughter, studious, obedient, never one to cause trouble. Her parents dreamed of her becoming a doctor, so she studied hard, got into medical school, and followed the path laid out for her. But as the years went by, she felt a growing emptiness. She loved helping people, but the work left her drained. She found herself daydreaming about writing, about traveling, about a life that looked nothing like the one she was living. But every time she thought about changing course, she was flooded with guilt. What would her parents say? What would people think? She told herself to be grateful, to stop being selfish, to stick to the plan. But the feeling never went away. Contrast that with someone like Aman, who always seemed to do things his own way. He dropped out of college, started a small business, failed, started again, and eventually found his calling as a chef. His family worried, his friends doubted, but Aman kept listening to his own instincts. It wasn't easy, there were setbacks, disappointments, moments of real fear. But through it all, he felt alive. He knew he was living his own life, not someone else's. Here's the uncomfortable truth, most people are living at least part of their lives for someone else. Maybe it's the career you chose because it was safe. Maybe it's the relationship you stayed in because it looked good on paper. Maybe it's the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you hide parts of yourself to fit in. We all do it, to some extent. It's human nature to want to belong, to be loved, to avoid conflict. But when the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be gets too wide, something inside you starts to break down. You feel restless, anxious, unfulfilled. You start to wonder if this is all there is. But why is it so hard to break free? Part of the reason is fear, fear of disappointing others, fear of being judged, fear of failing. We're taught to value security over authenticity, approval over self-expression. We're told that it's selfish to put our own needs first, that it's risky to follow our own path. And so, we settle. We convince ourselves that it's better to be safe than sorry, better to be accepted than alone. But here's the paradox, the more you try to live up to other people's expectations, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You start to lose touch with your own desires, your own values, your own sense of purpose. You become an actor in someone else's play, reciting lines you never wrote, wearing costumes that don't quite fit. And the longer you do it, the harder it becomes to remember who you really are. So how do you know if you're living someone else's life? Start by paying attention to the moments when you feel most alive, and the moments when you feel most numb. Notice when you're acting out of obligation, when you're saying yes to things you secretly want to say no to, when you're following a script that doesn't feel like your own. Ask yourself, if nobody else's opinion mattered, what would I choose? If I could start over, what would I do differently? These questions can be uncomfortable, even scary. But they're the first step toward waking up. It's also important to recognize that waking up isn't a one-time event. It's a process, a gradual peeling away of layers, a slow return to yourself. It takes courage to question the stories you've been told, to disappoint the people you love, to risk being misunderstood. But the alternative, living a life that isn't yours, is far more painful in the long run. The good news is, it's never too late to change. No matter how far you've wandered from your own path, you can always find your way back. It starts with honesty, the willingness to admit that something isn't working, that you want more, that you deserve to live a life that feels true to you. It requires patience, the understanding that change takes time, that you'll make mistakes, that you'll have to learn as you go. And it demands self-compassion, the ability to forgive yourself for the years you spent asleep, for the choices you made out of fear, for the times you put others' needs ahead of your own. Waking up to the realization that you're living someone else's life can feel like a shock to the system. It's as if you've been sleepwalking for years, only to suddenly open your eyes and see the world, and yourself, clearly for the first time. There's a mix of relief and regret, hope and fear. You might grieve for the time you've lost, the dreams you've set aside, the parts of yourself you've hidden away. But there's also a sense of possibility, a quiet excitement at the thought of finally living on your own terms. But what does it actually look like to reclaim your life? It doesn't happen all at once. It starts with small acts of honesty, admitting to yourself what you really want, even if you're not ready to say it out loud. Maybe it's the job you secretly hate, the relationship that drains you, the city that never felt like home. Maybe it's the creative project you've been putting off, the adventure you've been dreaming about, the version of yourself you've always wanted to become. The first step is simply to notice, to pay attention, to allow yourself to want what you want. This can be harder than it sounds. We're so used to filtering our desires through the lens of other people's expectations that we often don't know what we truly want. We ask ourselves, is this practical? Is this acceptable? Will this make my parents proud? Will this impress my friends? But the real question is, does this feel true to me? If the answer is no, it's time to get curious. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to impress, to please, to fit in? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Of course, breaking free from old patterns isn't easy. The people around you may not understand. They may resist, criticize, or even try to pull you back into your old roles. This is normal. When you change, it forces others to confront their own choices, their own fears, their own longing for authenticity. Some will support you, some will drift away, and some will try to hold you back. But remember, you are not responsible for other people's comfort. You are responsible for your own life. It helps to find allies, people who encourage your growth, who celebrate your risks, who remind you that it's okay to be different. These might be old friends, new mentors, or even strangers who share your values. Seek out communities where you can be yourself, where you can share your struggles and your victories, where you can learn from others who are also waking up. The journey is easier when you're not alone. As you begin to make changes, you'll likely encounter resistance, not just from others, but from within yourself. Old habits die hard. You might find yourself slipping back into people-pleasing, second-guessing your choices, doubting your worth. This is part of the process. Be gentle with yourself. Notice the patterns, but don't judge them. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you strengthen your sense of self. Each time you honor your own needs, you reclaim a little more of your life. It's also important to redefine what success means to you. For so long, you may have measured your worth by external standards, money, status, achievement, popularity. But real fulfillment comes from living in alignment with your own values, from doing work that matters to you, from building relationships that nourish you. Take time to reflect on what truly matters. What do you want to contribute to the world? What kind of person do you want to be? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Sometimes, the answers will surprise you. You might realize that the things you thought you wanted were never really yours. You might discover new passions, new dreams, new possibilities. You might find that the life you were meant to live is very different from the one you've been living. That's okay. Give yourself permission to change, to evolve, to grow. And remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. Life is not a straight line, it's a series of experiments, of trial and error, of learning and unlearning. You will make mistakes. You will have doubts. You will face setbacks. But every step you take toward authenticity is a victory, no matter how small. One of the most powerful things you can do is to practice saying no. No to the roles that don't fit. No to the expectations that drain you. No to the obligations that keep you stuck. Every no is also a yes to yourself, to your own needs, to your own dreams. It's not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot live your own life if you're always living for others. As you continue on this journey, you'll start to notice changes. You'll feel more alive, more present, more at peace. You'll find joy in the simple things, satisfaction in the work you choose, connection in the relationships you nurture. You'll begin to trust yourself, to listen to your own voice, to follow your own path. And slowly, the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be will begin to close. This is what it means to wake up, to stop sleepwalking through your days, to start living with intention, to claim your right to a life that feels like your own. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Because at the end of the day, the only person who has to live your life is you. There's a quiet revolution that happens when you finally decide to live your own life. It doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes, it's as simple as saying no to a gathering you don't want to attend, or as bold as quitting a job that drains your spirit. Sometimes, it's the decision to speak your truth, even if your voice shakes, or to pursue a passion that nobody else understands. These moments may seem small, but together, they add up to something extraordinary, a life that feels like it belongs to you. As you continue to wake up, you'll notice that the world around you starts to shift. The things that once seemed so important, approval, status, fitting in, begin to lose their hold. You realize that you don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need to justify your choices or explain your dreams. The people who truly matter will support you, and those who don't will fall away. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. You make space for new connections, for relationships built on authenticity rather than obligation. You'll also discover a new kind of confidence, not the loud, boastful kind, but a quiet assurance that comes from knowing who you are. You trust your own instincts, even when they lead you off the beaten path. You become less interested in comparing yourself to others, and more interested in exploring your own potential. You realize that your worth isn't tied to your achievements, your appearance, or your ability to meet other people's expectations. It's intrinsic, unshakable, yours by birthright. But living your own life doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt. In fact, you might feel them more acutely, because you're no longer hiding behind someone else's script. You're exposed, vulnerable, real. There will be days when you question your choices, when you wonder if it would be easier to go back to sleep, to slip back into old roles. That's normal. Growth is uncomfortable. Change is hard. But every time you choose authenticity over comfort, you strengthen your sense of self. One of the most beautiful things about waking up is that you become an invitation for others to do the same. When you live honestly, you give others permission to be honest too. When you pursue your own dreams, you inspire others to pursue theirs. Your courage becomes contagious. You become a light in a world that desperately needs more people who are awake, alive, and true to themselves. So, how do you keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear? Start by checking in with yourself regularly. Ask, am I making this choice because it feels right to me, or because it's what's expected? Am I saying yes out of genuine desire, or out of fear of disappointing someone? Am I living in alignment with my own values, or am I betraying myself to keep the peace? These questions are your compass. They help you course correct, to return to yourself when you start to drift. It's also helpful to create rituals that anchor you in your own life. Maybe it's a morning walk, a journaling practice, a creative hobby, or time spent in nature. These moments of solitude and reflection help you tune out the noise and reconnect with your own voice. They remind you that you are the author of your story, that you have the power to choose, to change, to begin again. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Living your own life is a process, not a destination. There will be setbacks, detours, moments of confusion. But every step you take in the direction of your own truth is a victory. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. Be patient with yourself. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be. As you continue on this journey, you'll find that life becomes richer, deeper, more meaningful. You'll experience moments of joy that can't be measured or explained, moments when you feel fully alive, fully present, fully yourself. You'll discover strengths you didn't know you had, passions you'd forgotten, dreams you thought were out of reach. You'll realize that the greatest gift you can give yourself and the world is to be unapologetically you. So, if you're reading this and wondering if you're living someone else's life, take it as a sign. A sign that it's time to wake up, to question, to explore. A sign that you deserve more than a life of quiet resignation. A sign that your dreams, your desires, your voice matter. The world doesn't need more people who are asleep, who are simply going through the motions. It needs people who are awake, who are willing to live with courage, with honesty, with heart. You have one life. Don't waste it living someone else's story. Don't wait for permission to be yourself. Don't settle for a life that doesn't light you up. Wake up now. Claim your right to a life that feels true, that feels real, that feels like home. Because at the end of the day, the only person who can live your life is you. And the world is waiting for you to show up, not as a copy, not as a shadow, but as the original, irreplaceable, one-of-a-kind person you were always meant to be.